Hi guys, this is Jason here from the Nathaniel School of Music, and in this lesson we are going to look at what I'm calling this video as 5 chord hacks which you may not have found or observed in traditional piano books or YouTube videos, conventional stuff. So these are things which I do very often on the piano, and a lot of students have always asked me, what makes your playing different than my playing, and what are these little things which you do which kind of add spice and flavor and make the music a lot more professional, right? And I feel that all these techniques are simple, very efficient and very professional, so anyone could use them. So let's get started. Technique number 1 is a technique which I call as finger swapping, right? So while playing chords, if you just take a simple flow of maybe the chords of the C major scale, that's C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, and B diminished. Now if you hear it sonically, there is a little bit of a gap, isn't it? Why is there a gap? The gap is there because I have to sort of jump to the next chord, especially when two chords don't have any notes in common. Example, C major and D minor, right? So you have to sort of take your fingers off and move. Now, one way to counter this is to use chord inversions. But there are a lot of instances where you may need to climb up, and you may need to just jump up randomly to serve more melodic things or to serve a different kind of voicing perhaps. So let's explore this with a series of chords so I can just show you how this whole finger swapping thing works. So if I play something like see what's happening there? Now, in a normal world, there's a kind of a jump between each chord, right? So I try to avoid that. So just check this out. C major, G major is normal, but now I want to go to A minor. So I did C major, G major. Now A minor, I don't have any more free fingers, right? My pinky is taken up by this G major's B. So I have to now jump it and move here. So instead of doing that, you'd kind of swap out the old fingers and put in some new fingers, which allows you to certainly play the next chord more easily. So the whole idea about finger swapping is how do you make the next chord easy? Right? It doesn't matter where you are, it kind of gives you that freedom to traverse this way or that way in the piano to serve whatever chord you're going to play next. So if you do C major, I have some fingers for G, so I play that, but now I swap them out to go to A minor, and that allows me to play with my pinky. And yes, one finger may have to jump, but the whole idea of finger swapping is at least 2 out of the 3 notes of the triad should sort of linger on or should sustain onward to the next chord to make the chord playing a lot smoother. So what I would do is C major, swap. Now I want to go there. No, I was here. I want to go there and play F major because la, I like that note. La, la, la. Right? So I think it sounds quite smooth, and it may not look so great, but the whole idea is it's about what it sounds like at the end of the day. So you may not have found this technique used a lot because what happens is the piano players tend to use the sustain pedal, or you have tons of reverb to kind of compensate for all this. But there are 2 things which sort of happened to me while growing up as a kid. One is the piano which we used to play in the house, the upright piano, did not have a working sustain pedal. Nothing worked. So whenever I pressed it, something went wrong with the piano, and then we had to call the tuner. And I also used to observe my mom and granddad in the church playing the pipe organ. And with their style of playing, especially playing these hymns, they would move around really smoothly, and I would quietly see them swapping out fingers. But then that's not what you teach in a piano class, right? La, 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 la. Sounds quite smooth, I guess, right? And then, of course, the left hand follows. If you ask me, that actually sounds very choral and very melodic as well. Normally when we play chords, well, we either play them using the block positions, or you kind of fight that by playing inversions, right? If you haven't already, do watch my entire series on chord inversions, which should help you really navigate through chords. But once you know your chords, now your chord inversions, when you play them together and when you're in the heat of the moment, there's always a need to kind of break out of convention, to break out of the standard technique which you're taught, shift smoothly between chords. But what if the melody demands it? Like in this example, you see all these quick swapping stuff keep happening. Right, so this is what I want you guys to keep at the back of your mind when you play the piano. Slowly but surely it may come into your weaponry, right? And I hope it does, and I hope it makes sense. Right, guys, so the next rather unconventional technique which I use on the piano while playing chords is what I call as chord flams. Okay, flams are derived from the snare drum of the drummer, where they do that very often. Instead of hitting the snare as tha, they hit it as thra, right? So you get that additional hit, right? You also hear it a lot in marching band with snare drums there. So, and you hear it a lot with guitars, right? A guitar conceptually is a 6-string instrument, and the musician sort of slides his or her hand down the 6th string. So inevitably, he's not playing all the 6 strings exactly together. There's obviously a small delay between the notes. And on the piano, when we play chords, let's say E minor like this, we tend to want to play them together, right? That's generally what's taught. And if you're an electronic music producer, if you use softwares, you'll see that those MIDI bars are like exactly aligned. Now, I think that's not cool. And I don't think that's the greatest way to play chords, especially when you listen to guitars, drums, and all these very natural instruments which flam so well, right? I guess that's where the term flamenco guitar came into being, possibly. Right, guys, so let's get started with this whole chord flamming business. So you go E minor and B, E, G, that is, and I practice playing it like this. Your ears are going to be the best judge, right? You've obviously heard music played before, so you don't want it to be like, you don't want to forget the 2 notes of the chord, or you don't want to like slip, It shouldn't sound awkward. Then you obviously have to go back to normal boring block hits, right? So the whole idea is get this to kind of be part of your weaponry. It should be a normal way of playing chords, as opposed to that, which I think tends to sound a lot more forceful, a lot more robotic, and not so natural compared to this. For some reason, this feels a lot more human. And this is generally how you'll find me playing chords, whether it's a triad or whether it's a bigger chord, right? And what's nice about flamming, once you practice with one hand, you can sort of practice with both hands, like the left hand leading towards the right hand. Something like this. Right? But the whole idea is not to hear a million notes. And you don't have to do it all the time either. Like, for example, or I tend to do it very often, then maybe more often than I probably should. But you get the idea, I hope. This is called as chord flamming, which could be like a very default way to play chords, to kind of make it a lot more human, if you ask me. Right, guys, so moving onward to technique number 3, which I find very, very useful to think of while playing my chords, is what do each of the fingers do? You have your thumb, index, middle, ring, and pinky. I'm sure you know that by now. But anyway, so the first challenge which I found a lot of students playing chords is they don't like playing chords starting on a black note, right? So there's a simple hack for that. It's just common sense. Your thumb is a small finger. So when you move all your other hands inside to play a chord, like let's say D flat major or C sharp major, which is C sharp F A flat or D flat F A flat. So you go. Normally, if you have to play this chord, it's a bit tricky, right? But what I would suggest you to do is just keep your hand always pointing straight. Don't turn your hand. That also, de-angles your body. So always keep your hand straight. And if you have to, which you most definitely will when you're playing black chords or chords starting on a black note, you can angle your thumb moving in. So the thumb just moves in. It's a very stretchy finger. So go in there and play deep. I found a lot of people continue to want to play, away from the black note. There's no harm in going inside, right? And my fingers are quite big and thick, so to speak. So I'm not having that much of a problem playing it. So you can do D flat this way. You can do E flat, A flat, F sharp, some minors. The whole idea is the thumb goes in. And another issue with the top fingers I found with students is the ring finger and the pinky. So what I like to do is, since the pinky is a smaller finger, reserve it for the last note of a chord if that last note is a white color note, and reserve the ring finger for the last note of a chord if the last note is a black color note, for obvious reasons. So if you take, let's say, a D major chord in this inversion, A D F sharp, this has F sharp at the top. I would most definitely want to play it with these fingers, thumb, index, and the ring finger for the F sharp. And then if I want to go to G after that, my pinky is waiting there for it. It's also great when you're playing inversions. Generally, when you play chords, all your 5 fingers need to be activated. So that's something I would highly recommend. Some instances may also demand the index finger to replace the thumb while playing a black color chord or a chord starting on a black note. Like if you do A major like this, let's say you don't have the time to play it like that, you can always use your index, but try to use your index generally at the edge of the black key, not here. Otherwise, there's a kind of an imbalance created, and also due to physics, it's going to be very tough to play a white key there because it's suspended there. So you will have to push a lot more down and your fingers will start hurting. So generally, you could play a chord starting on a black note like this, or if you are doing it with your thumb starting, angle the thumb, move all the way in, keep your hand straight. And then what did I say about the ring and the pinky usage? If the last note is black, ring finger. If the last note is white, pinky finger. Now what do I do about the middle finger? Well, I leave that to you. It's the middle finger. It can go anywhere, right? So play around with this and hope that that tip made some kind of sense. Right, guys? So moving onward to technique number 4. It's basically about a tool we all have on the piano. We can plug it into a digital one, a MIDI controller, or even a real piano where it's already there, right? It's been there with the piano from the beginning of time. The pedal, right? So whenever a lot of us play the piano, especially when you're learning from more experienced players or when you see more experienced players, then figure out, oh, that guy seems to sound a bit better than me. Why? He's playing the same thing, right? The secret is pretty much in this pedal. So what happens with the pedal is, if I just play a chord and lift it, it's the end of the sound. But if I hold the pedal, voila, it just goes on and on and on, right? So that's basically the sustain pedal. So what you'd like to do when you're playing the pedal is try to explore a few things on the piano. Maybe you could play the same chord in different positions, maybe lower, higher. And as you can see, my pedal is held down, right? And whenever you're changing, you don't want to keep it pressed and then change, isn't it? You don't want to do... It sounds really, really annoying. So what you'd rather do there is play before you play the next chord, lift and then bring it back, 3, lift and bring back, lift and bring back just before you hit the chord. Don't let both the noises superimpose. Lift, there we go, and coming back. So essentially you could practice the pedal at basically all of your chord changing points. Now there are many uses of the sustain pedal. I've actually made a full video on this, which we'll put in the description. So do check it out if you feel that your sustain pedal skills are not so good. Right guys, so the final technique which I'd like to share in this tutorial is what I call as ghosts. Right? Now the ghosts are essentially soft notes which are there, again very, very inspired by drummers over the years. So what you do is you play a chord progression or even one chord in a traditional way, something like this. I'm playing a D major chord, I'm holding the D in my bass. Now what happens here is I would like to start creating some movement or some more rhythmic interest. So what you're hearing now is what I call the ghost. You see this thumb, it's barely hitting the key. Sometimes you don't even hear it. Maybe I forget to play it, but it's that human thing, you know, which just always lingers on the 8th note. So if you're playing quarter notes or if you're playing on the pulse, 2, 3, 4, you don't have anything inside the pulse to kind of make the music more interesting, to go inside the beat. So that's what I lightly do with this finger. It's usually the thumbs of both my hands, and I start always with my left hand thumb, or I try to get the ghost with the left hand thumb, playing probably the octave, the safest note in the left hand. So you go, there we go. So if I make it little louder, you may not like this, right? Now it's sounding very forceful, so I go very soft. Practice that. So I get that 8th note feel, very subtle 8th note feel. So you could ghost those 8th notes, right? Or I could do ghost triplets. One triplet, tuck it, tuck it, tuck it, tuck it, tuck it, tuck it. You get that 3 feel, right? But it's quite subtle. So that's the whole idea with ghosts or ghosting or the ghost technique on the piano. So I guess all these 5 techniques which I have shared with you guys today may be things which you'll enjoy, which you may have wondered, oh, is it important, you know? But truthfully, it's generally what most piano players do, myself included, but sometimes we just forget to observe it, you know. It probably just evolves over years of playing the piano. And I thought I'll make this lesson to kind of fast track this whole, you know, growth or this whole journey for you as possibly a younger or a less experienced player watching this video, right? So let's recap, guys, all the techniques. You first have finger swapping, where you just kind of look a little bit more ugly on the piano with your hands, but why? So that sounds awesome. So essentially, when you have to skip big leaps of chords, you could swap out fingers. and see how that particular thing goes, right? So with finger swapping, then we also looked at chord flams. Great for ballads. We do tra, tra, just like a guitar player playing flamenco. So then we have the whole finger duties, if you will, what you play in the lower parts of the chord, what you play in the higher register of the chord, how you use the thumb moving in, and how you use the ring and the pinky, ring for the black note and pinky for the white note. Then we looked at the mysterious sustain pedal, which you rarely see in lessons. You'll always find the guy's hand, some notation books, and some fancy app showing you the notes, but then you don't see the pedal. So I thought I'll mention that. A lot of the lessons you find, or a lot of the players you hear, are all using this sustain pedal, which is physically a part of the piano. It's just built into the mechanics. So learn that, pick up one if you can, and get cracking. And last but not least, I talked about this idea of playing ghost notes, which kind of make your chord playing a lot more moving, right? It also keeps you bang on the time. Generally, your timing gets a lot better for some reason when you play ghosts, right? Hope you guys found the lesson useful. As always, this is Jason here from the Nathaniel School of Music. If you liked the lesson, please share the video, subscribe to our channel, leave us a comment for something you'd like to learn in the future, and keep rocking. Cheers.